From Toronto to Tokyo, and from Thonia to Syrinx, this is The Basement, your companion to the Ready Player One novel. Join our hosts each episode for complete chapter breakdowns and deep dives into the pop culture references through a series of challenges and homework assignments. The Basement is the Ready Player One podcast for people who love things. And now, please welcome Albert and the rest of the Gunters for this week's episode. Hello, Gunters. You are in the basement. My name is Albert Padilla, and this is episode 0009. There can be only one. So we are trucking along here, looking at the Ready Player One novel, diving into each one of these chapters. And for a chapter that really doesn't do a whole lot outside of just Art3mis and Parzival standing there having a very casual conversation, there's quite a bit to talk about. So to help me bring all this in and talk about all this is none other than Mr. Dr. Will 8-Bit. Will Wilkins.
What's going on? Good to see you.
That's quite the, what a Smurfy day you seem to be having there.
Well, I smurfed as much Smurf as I could smurf today, so.
He was doing this before we came on air, so my guess is this is going to be a running gag throughout here. So anywhere, I'm sure any point you can try to work in a Smurf reference or Smurf verb or noun or whatever the heck this thing is, I'm sure you're going to do it. So how you doing tonight?
Fantastic. I could have done it right there, but I didn't. I'm reserving myself, although it is the last day of vacation, so I'm going to have to shave tomorrow. But looking forward to it, man. Love chapter 9. A lot of good pop culture to talk about.
Yeah. Hey, just out of the gate here, was there ever a Smurf that had facial hair?
Yes. Now, according to Smurf lore, a Smurf can't grow facial hair until they reach a minimum age of 400 years, which is why only Papa Smurf has facial hair in the cartoon series.
Yeah, he's the more obvious one. I would. Yeah. Okay, well, good to know. I'm glad we knocked that out.
I've got some useless Smurf trivia for you this evening.
Excellent. We'll certainly take advantage of that. Hey, so before we get started, I just want to say a quick thank you to Retro Riley for the background that I'm using tonight. I freaking love it. She's a very talented woman, and she's got great taste in music as well. Please, I've tagged her on the Basement Instagram account, so she does other artwork. Please go support her. But I really love this artwork that she did. So thank you again, Riley. Appreciate it. Okay, so let's get into Chapter 8. We'll do a quick recap, really quick recap. Talk about Chapter 9 summary, and then we'll start breaking down the narrative, and then finally dive into all the pop culture stuff. So in Chapter 8, Parzival wins the Copper Key, and he's got a clue to the first gate now. And this is after he successfully bests the Lich King Acererak in the best 2 out of 3 matches in the game of Joust by Williams Electronics. With his new key in hand, he attempts to make his way out of the Tomb of Horrors, but is stopped just short of the exit by a mysterious figure who asks him, "Who the hell are you?" All right, Chapter 9. Parzival is greeted and stopped by the infamous Art3mis, a high-level and notorious gunter he's secretly been cyber-crushing on for nearly 3 years. After exchanging formal and witty Highlander greetings and a hella cool contact card, it's apparent that Art3mis is unaware that Parzival has just earned the Copper Key. Parzival tries to lie his way out of the situation like any normal boy would do, and he gets so he wants to get on with his search for the first gate, but Art3mis pulls up the scoreboard. She is shocked and appalled to see that Art3mis is now in first place with 10,000 points and deems him, quote, a dishonest sack of crap. The Art3mis then forces Parzival into a casual yet still contentious conversation about how he would spend the winnings should he win them, and her idea and his idea are completely, I guess, night and day. So after diffusing the situation somewhat, Parzival and Art3mis talk about potential plans, and the hunt. Eventually, he gives her kind of a last-minute tip before they separate and go their different ways. And we'll talk a little bit about this later, because I think this plays into this chapter. It plays into a little bit later with H, and then later on, there's almost kind of some lingering regrets that he has because he did part them with some help there. So that brings us to Chapter 9. Quickly, for this one, I know you mentioned it earlier, there was a lot of references in here, a lot of pop culture references, and there's, again, it's crazy. Like they don't move this entire chapter. They're literally standing there having the entire conversation. Now, granted, it's not a long conversation, but this one really did kind of pack a punch with a lot of different stuff to talk about.
It did. I think what strikes me most about this chapter, and I know you don't do this very often, but when I look at the introduction of the character versus the introduction of Artemis in the movie, they're far different in their approaches. I thought the thing that struck me the most that really isn't reflected in the movie is the description of what Artemis looks like when he first meets her. I mean, he described the first adjective he used to describe her is stocky, and the Artemis in the movie is anything but.
Yeah,
and I
she's super
really
slender,
thought,
thin. Yeah,
right. And I thought Ernest Cline was really smart in the book in that when you're thinking about what is traditionally considered beautiful, it's different things to different people. So, and I think people that are, especially introverts, people that read, the guys that are playing, D&D and guys like us growing up, you're not always looking for the prom queen.
Yeah.
The things you're looking for are far different, right? Like the things that he describes her as afterwards are far more important. So this leads me to a good question for you. Where do you rank attractiveness in terms of the value set you have for a woman when you're looking for a partner, Albert? Inquiring minds want to know.
It's actually never, and I know this is cliche, it's really not up there. And I think if people are really being genuine about themselves, for the most part, I think most people feel like that's probably the case, right? That's not the first thing. Now, it's one of the things that catches our eye. I mean, granted, that's just natural, right? But at the end of the day, it depends on what you're looking for too. Like if you're looking for lasting relationships and something more meaningful, then yeah, I think all of us are looking for something that is deeper. And I think we're able to see past a lot of things that maybe are superficial or people put on a higher pedestal when really they're not important at the end of the day, right? And a lot of this, and not to wax like, I don't know, my life here, but this for guys, it seems, and I'm stereotyping, so I do apologize, but at least for me personally, this is stuff that we don't realize until later on in life. I think girls get it a lot sooner, and maybe just some people just in general get it a lot sooner based on their maturity. But yeah, I mean, what I would look for these days is totally different than what I would have looked for long ago.
Agreed.
How did I do?
Fantastic, sir. I think you've offended neither one of our spouses, so that's all you can ever wish to accomplish.
Circle gets a square. I'll take Jim J. Bullock for the block, please.
That's the smurfiest answer you could have given.
All right, and so on this note, Parzival sees Artemis for the first time, and he's really like infatuated with her. And I love this idea that there's these online celebrities, because the novel was 2010 is when it came out. There was, at the time when this was written, I mean, I don't know what was going on really with YouTube, but it wasn't probably as big as it is today, although it was probably starting to get there. But the idea of online celebrities today, I mean, that's all kids talk about, right? Are the YouTubers. And later on, when he gets his own channel, right? He's got his own channel in the Oasis. And when he starts describing that sounds exactly like YouTubers today. But this idea that he was just infatuated with her. And I guess one of the questions I had, I mean, he was basically starstruck. I know you're a well-traveled person. I've seen many pictures of you with famous people, sometimes corrupt people. No, I'm kidding. Famous people. But have you ever, like, who's somebody that you met and were just like completely awestruck by their presence, even just being with them or talking to them in some way?
I would say that just about I've been blessed in that every celebrity I've met has been totally cool. I haven't had one ostentatious or pretentious person or celebrity ever. I mean, Jackie Earl Haley, who I met on the way to Mexico one time, sat next to him on the way down there, was totally cool. And like no one on the plane except for me knew who he was, right? So I try not to be that guy when I meet a celebrity. I typically don't ask for photos. I did take a photo with him. He was very cool. But of everyone I was all struck with, it probably was Val Kilmer. I got to meet him at an after event for his.
Was he a play or something?
Yeah, it was the Mark Twain piece.
Yeah,
where he was doing the biography of Samuel Clemens. It was fantastic, and he wasn't in the best health at the time,
right?
But he took more than enough time with each person. He went out of his way to talk to everybody who was in the room. He was incredibly approachable. I have seen Eva Longoria outside of a restaurant one time, and her security asked me to move, but my body was frozen and I couldn't speak English anymore. So I don't know that that was awestruck, but I was definitely losing blood to my head.
Yeah, I'm trying to think. Like, I really have not met that many celebrities, but I'm kind of like you. I mean, the only one, and I know again, I'm probably being way too cliche about this, but I've had a few opportunities to meet and speak with Ernie Klein, and more than just the, oh, here, let me get an autograph kind of thing. And like you said earlier, he is one of those people. I mean, yeah, he's got now. It's well over time, the lines have gotten longer, and he's definitely has more of an entourage, and it's harder to get time one on one with him. But I can tell you early on. I mean, he would sit there and do autographs, and then he'd just stay there. And you could go up to him and talk to him and talk about Star Wars and talk about Ready Player One and video games, and I mean, all day long. And even right after the movie had come out, he came through here in Austin. This is well after the movie; it had already been a year out, and he was doing like a cinema thing here, and it wasn't really advertised. And he was driving around his brother's DeLorean. Anyways, after he did his autographs, he hung out, and I got a chance to just speak with him. But the point is, I got nervous around him, and I still get nervous around him. I don't know if it's because of this show. I don't know if it's because it's him or what it is, but I generally don't get starstruck, and I don't really bother celebrities either. I think they're awesome, and I love the stuff they do, but I'm one of those people that's like, no, just give them their space, let them be who they need to be kind of thing. So.
Yeah, I remember we met him right before the Ready Player One trailer launched, and they showed it at Classic Game Fest.
Yes.
And I remember he was just walking around the floor show, and he was virtually invisible. Like, you were the only person there freaking out like a 12-year-old girl with tickets to One Direction,
Yeah.
just saying like, oh my God, that's Ernest Klein. And then he comes and sits right next to us at the panel that we were watching, he and his wife,
Yeah.
and just had the most normal nerd conversation about Star Wars fan theories and all kinds of stuff. It was great.
Yeah.
And then, signed a book for us. That was pretty cool. Well,
Yeah.
for me.
Yeah, for you. Yeah, no. So the idea, and this plays out a little bit later, especially as the high five becomes a thing, and Parzival starts talking about all the things that he gets, all the all the endorsements that he gets, and the way people are kind of stalking him, the paparazzi are kind of hanging around his asteroid Falco later down the road, and all that. So, but let's talk about the non-PvP zone, because this was interesting, and I don't know, there's really not a lot to dig into here, but there, today's games, most games, if you're in a non-PvP zone, you can't even perform the act of attacking somebody else. Like, it is blocked even before you can do it, right? But yet in the game, at least in the Oasis, in the Tomb of Horrors, they weren't sure if they were in a non-PvP zone. So, she decides to take her sword and try to attack him. And it's right then that it actually stops and blocks him. But, I don't know if that's, again, not a lot to dig in there, but I just want to ask this question about PvP in general. And I don't know, do you do much online gaming? I don't know. You told me you don't these days.
Yeah,
but...
I don't. I never really have. I love console gaming. I love old school gaming. 16-bit and back is really my sweet spot, just because I like the personal interaction of it. And I think early PvP gaming just turned me off. I mean, I still play some COD online, but I mean, for the most part, I only play with a tight group of people that I know. Otherwise, it's just a bunch of people cussing at one another.
Yep.
It's not really my vibe, and then anyone that I've ever talked to that seriously plays online games, I mean, they're so knee deep in their guild. There's you can't get a normal conversation out of those guys. They take it far too serious. It's kind of like pop culture where, I never want to be doing this to the point where it's not fun. Like, you see guys that take their pop culture so serious, and that, the canon has to be this. And for me, it just needs to be entertainment. That's the level of emotion I need to garner out of it. And if it doesn't need to be beyond that.
I teeter. I'll be honest. I do teeter on that. And I've been.
I know you do. I was talking about you when I said it.
I've been in games too, like for guilds and stuff. Like, I've been in some where it felt like I was going home to a second job, right? I mean, it was all the same problems, just online. So, we'll get to some of that later on as the novel progresses, because there are definitely some parallels with some of the stuff that we went through just not that long ago in like World of Warcraft, and that I know are still that exist today. The all right, so I was going to bring up the term ganked. I don't know. Are you familiar with the term ganked?
Like the thug term, gank.
Yeah, but in online gaming. So ganked is when you're out there doing your own thing, not making anybody mad, just being peaceful, and somebody comes and just brutally kills you for no other reason, just to grief you for to some extent. So, anyways,
Okay.
yeah, there you go. So,
that's the same definition that I had. I think Ice Cube taught me that definition.
He did. Yeah, there's a song about it. There's several songs about it actually. All right, let's talk about the exchanging of the contact cards because I really liked this idea that that Art3mis had her contact card. Or in the Oasis, you can design your contact card however you'd like, but Art3mis had designed hers as a Star Wars action figure, full on back card kind of thing, and Parzival had designed his as an Atari 2600 game, which looked like the adventure game cartridge, which we would know, we would see that obviously referenced in the Ready Player One movie, but. If you had to have any kind of Oasis contact card, now you're a business card man. Didn't you used to keep a collection of all your business cards?
Yeah, I do. I think one of my social media accounts has like all of my business cards from the dawn of time on it. Although remember when you had that machine at Westlakes and you could pay like $2 and it would print 10 business cards for you?
Those are gone?
Yeah, I don't have those. I didn't have a job. I don't remember what they said.
I just had your name on it, if I remember correctly. And your
Call
beeper.
me if you're interested.
No, it was your beeper number.
My beeper. Yes.
But so the question here is really about, I guess, if you could have any kind of your name tag be anything you want, what would it look like?
So if I had a business card, if I just had a contact card that looked like a business card that I was giving anyone, it would look like Patrick Bateman's from American Psycho. It would say like Garamond Classico SC and have the Cillian Rail font and be in a perfect bone colored paper.
Oh my goodness.
But it'd have my name.
Yeah. I've thought about this a lot, and the Star Wars idea is almost perfect for me. The 2600 cartridge is perfect for me. I would probably go with something like, do you remember the old Transformers action figures? And you could flip them around on the back, and they had that chart
that you could cut out.
Yeah, you could cut out that chart with the grid, like something of that look or that design, or even just the Star Wars or the Transformers box art for the old retro G1 Generation 1 box art. Something in there I think would be fitting for me. Kind of like our logo, the basement logo, if you will. But.
Like, I think realistically I'd probably do something NES related, but it's been done so many times. The Gray Black Red has been done. The classic original black card's been done. There's really nothing you could do. Maybe if I did one that was all Tingenes, or it was just like the gold red, and it was like quasi like a fake business card where it was, this is not an authorized. It doesn't have the seal of quality on it.
That's great. Yeah, no, that's a good idea. Big Mike's here. Yep, he's making an appearance. Okay, so Parzival, he beats the Lich on his first attempt, and throughout the novel, he does a lot of things like right out of the gate, no error, really doesn't have any consequences. And I'm just going to throw this out there because it's probably something that'll come back up a little bit later, I would assume, as we continue to talk about the novel. But did you ever have a problem with this? Because there's a lot of huff and puff these days, and I do another show, a little show called In Star Wars, right? And we talk about this a lot, about the Mary Sue of Rey Skywalker, whether or not she's really a Mary Sue. And I don't want to get into that because that's not really what the conversation's about. But just characters in general. Do you have a problem with characters that are just infallible and they constantly get everything right, and there's really you don't ever feel like there's any kind of conflict or real repercussions because they're going to just overcome everything? Do you need that in your novels?
So I don't need it in my novels. I mean, I love Ready Player One, but I don't consider it literature. We're not going to look back on it and say, "Oh, this is like the Grapes of Wrath." No one's ever going to confuse the two. This is a love letter to 30 and 40 somethings that want to be nostalgic and then follow a storyline that basically follows the same types of storylines of something that you would read in the 80s. So I don't have a problem with it. It is in your face too many times in the book. Not that I want to besmirch a great author or anything, because my opinion is any book, and I don't care what the quality of it gets, just one kid to pick it up and physically read a book, that's a win. So you're not going to get a lot of criticism from me off of it. But yeah, there's a lot of suspension yeah, of belief where you're like, oh, good thing I knew how to play the guitar. Oh, good thing I was playing joust for the last 5 weeks. Oh, good thing it was like there's there's a bunch of those in the book, but I don't have a problem with it. It's fine.
Yeah,
It's
and
entertainment.
yeah, I would agree. I don't know if it's a generational thing either, because I think about it like, and I think about like us. We talked about strategy guides a couple episodes ago. I think about like cheat codes and God mode and all that stuff, and that's kind of how I rationalize it in my head. It's like, okay, I I would. This is no different. Like I'm a Gen Xer. I'm not above somebody knowing everything and just running through the game, right, or running through the story just for the story's sake. And I don't know. Maybe there's something there. I don't know, but um, all right, let's talk just quickly about the. They were talking about the prize money is $240 billion, right, in terms of winnings, and they've got very different plans. You've got Parzival who wants to go out and basically he says buy a mansion, cool stuff, not be poor. He talks about a nuclear powered ship and bringing all this pop culture stuff onto the ship and just having a party, right? And then you've got Artemis, who's like, no, we need to figure out how to save the planet and tackle world hunger, and just very different reasons or different ideas in terms of what they would do with the money. But I don't know. Have you ever put any thought into what you would do with, let's just say, $1 billion? What would you do with a billion? Much less 240, but $1 billion. Where are you spending your money first off?
Yeah. No idea. I think if I had $1 billion, I'd probably easily give a half of it to charity because for tax reasons, I'd have to give at least 33.5% in order to break even. I'm not trying to pay a lot of gain taxes at the end of the year, but the rest of it, I'd probably just hold and then live off interest and then hopefully get to be generationally wealthy so that you had something to pass on to your kids and your kids' kids. I make an okay amount of money now. And really, I don't live far outside of my means. I'm a pretty simple guy. I don't like jewelry. I don't, I do like rare Nintendo games. But between that and I really like nice cars, I'm a simple guy. I can eat fast food and I'd like the same thing about my wife. At the end of the day, what I want is someone who's comfortable wearing her Louis Vuittons to a taco truck. And that's what I married.
Very nice. Yeah, she's probably comfortable with that too. I think I've actually seen her wear Louis Vuittons to a taco truck. So, all
So
right.
it is an interesting point that they're making. In fact, Mike talks about this a little bit. Buy a spaceship and get out of here. But, I've heard scientists talk about if you were able to create the technology to terraform a different world and you were able to figure out a way to sustain life, say on Mars, and you were able to come up with all of these technological advancements to do that, well, that's far more complex a problem than just fixing what we have here on Earth. So if you're able to terraform a planet that has nothing, you should be able to restore a planet that's at least halfway broken.
That's probably true. I think and it's not really a counter argument, but the only benefit, I guess the real benefit is that you're building something a little bit that can last longer. I think at some point resources here are finite and we're eventually going to overrun it. So, do both if you can.
I got an answer for that. It's real simple. 2 words. Soylent Green. That's the answer to all of it.
Right. We'll be talking about Soylent Green in chapter 25. No.
I'm sure we are.
Oh, we are. All right, let's get into the pop culture references. So, in the first one we're going to talk about, it's kind of a combination. So, in early on, he says, and he's talking about he being Parzival, talking about Artemis. He says she wore a suit-scaled gunmetal blue armor that looked more sci-fi than fantasy. Twin blaster pistols were slung low on her hips in quick-draw holsters, and there was a long, curved Elvish sword and a scabbard across her back. She wore fingerless Road Warrior-style racing gloves and a pair of classic Ray-Ban shades. So, let me pull this up so we can jump into this. I want to talk about the blaster pistols because it's kind of it's a really quick reference, and I've got here a couple of different. So we're looking at a couple different Star Wars blaster pistols because that's essentially what he's talking about, right? You've got the DL-44 over there. You've got a sporting blaster over here, which is what we saw Princess Leia use, and then you hope. The bottom one is the holdout blasters. This was used by the scout troopers, but this idea, the blasters, is obviously from Star Wars, but I know. Do you have one of these? Like, I know you've got a number of props for stuff that you do, cosplay and all that. But have you ever gone to the extent of buying or making anything like this? Because these are obviously
I do have one blaster, and technically it's Pose blaster from the new series, but I'm
Yeah.
using it for my Mega Man X-Wing fighter pilot uniform. I would say that's about it. That actually blew my mind that you were going through that and naming all of those blasters. I'm not quite that level of Star Wars-ness. What is that there? 44, 45?
220, 221, whatever it takes.
But I bet you I know more about real firearms than you do.
Yes, that is very true. I'm not going to pretend I know anything about real firearms. I know how to shoot them, and I'm pretty decent at them. But I got like two. I got like a shotgun, a 22, and maybe like a Beretta. That's about all I've ever shot in my life, ever.
Do you own a firearm now?
No, sir, I do not own a firearm.
Okay.
I know I'm like the only Texan that does not own one.
Yes, you are. But that's why we've relegated you to Austin.
That's right.
That's where we keep you all.
That's exactly true. I guess, do you have one of the questions I had is, do you have a favorite like Star Wars weapon blaster? If you could have any one of these, because he's got these things, and later on he's talking about different blaster pistols and stuff like that, and then just in reality, in Ecto 88, there is a DL-44 blaster like we see here, Han Solo's blaster, in the passenger side. He's got it sitting there in a holster, and you can pull it out, and that thing is heavy. I mean, it looks exactly like the real thing. It's heavy, like you would expect the real thing to be. But if you had, if you had your whims about any kind of Star Wars blaster, which one would you pick?
Okay, you got to pick the Solo blaster. I don't even know. That's a non-issue. Remember we played like Star Wars RPG? If you had his blaster, it was like +9 this and +8 that. It was ridiculous.
Yeah.
Right? You couldn't miss for the most part. Now that's an easy question. Anyone who answers anything different, just so you know, they're wrong. Those people, unless it's like a woman who wants like Leia's blaster, right? But if you pick one from like the new trilogy, you're wrong.
So here's one that I actually like, maybe slightly more than the DL-44, and that's the Mandalorian's new blaster. So the Ammon sniper rifle, because that is a trifecta, right? You've got a sniper rifle, you've got a taser, and thing is packing a ton of gas in it, so you can actually do disintegrations. I don't know,
but I'm gonna leave this up to your fan base. But referring to a rifle as a blaster seems like no good. It's like calling a pistol a rifle. Like, isn't that like, aren't blasters like pistols? Isn't that a synonym kind of?
It is. The question was really about what if you could have any Star Wars like weapon, what would it be?
Counselor, I'll have the court reporter read it back. That's not the question you asked me.
Yeah, I didn't read this right.
You smurfed it all up.
I smurfed it up. There we go. Ding. I'm going to put that counter into the sound effects here. Mike wants the same thing. I know Mike really well. All right, let's talk. And so in that same quote, he mentions that she's wearing Road Warrior style gloves. So let's talk about the Road Warrior a little bit, because this is a movie growing up that I really, really liked a lot. And it was surprising for me. Like, now that I watch it, it's actually a little bit slower than I remember. And that's not a bad thing. Like, I still enjoy it tremendously, but it does feel a little bit slower than I remember, because all I remember focusing on was all the action sequences, which are really great. But anyway, so just quickly. So this is the Road Warrior from 1981. It's what we know it as here in the U.S. It was known as Mad Max 2, pretty much internationally, especially in like Australia and the UK. Directed by George Miller, and this was starring Mel Gibson, with music by Brian May, not the Brian May from Queen, which blew my mind. I for some reason I always thought it was. It's not him at all. But we're going to talk about Queen a little bit later. And the tagline of the movie was "Just one man can make a difference." So the quick synopsis: The Road Warrior is a post-apocalyptic action film about a battle-hardened warrior. He's an ex-police officer named Max and his dog, who take it upon themselves, selfishly to some extent, to help out a colony of settlers who are under siege by marauders. The movie takes place after what would essentially have been World War III of sorts, and where a, quote, tank of juice was more precious than water. Max discovers that these settlers are actually coveting an oil well. We're going to dig into that a little bit here, Mr. Wilkins. They're coveting an oil well, but desperately want to abandon the well and head for the beach and enjoy what they hope is a very peaceful life, free of being attacked by marauders, but they also want to take their fuel with them as well. So Max eventually helps the settlers escape in exchange for some gasoline himself, and leading up until their escape, the movie is filled with crazy car chases, brutal violence, and magnificent mayhem, as one would expect from any movie of this genre. So How many times have you seen this movie? Is this one that you watched as a kid? And what's your overall thought about it?
No, it's a good film. I've seen it probably at least a dozen times. It's it's my cousin Vic's one of his favorite movies. I think it's just the Lord Humongous. All the quotes that he has are fantastic.
Yeah.
The kid's a little disturbing. This might be the movie that made me want to eat dog food just to see what it tasted like, because that dude was tearing it up. That's what I remember most about the beginning of that movie.
Looks so good.
I can tell you from a chemistry perspective, that gasoline's not going to last forever. The idea of just going through a barren wasteland years and years after an apocalypse to siphon fuel from tanks is a fool's errand. It's never going to work.
Well, you would know more than probably anybody else here. So
you're going to have to find a way to reoxygenate that gasoline before it's ever going to work.
Okay. So yeah, Chaka. Let's talk about the kid. That's not his name. I called him Chaka because I think that's what he reminded me of. But yeah, that kid was kind of crazy looking the entire time. But I'm with you too. Like the dog food. Like I always thought, man, that dog food looks great. I found there's actually somebody that sells T-shirts with that logo, so you can buy a T-shirt with a logo. So I don't know. I may have to drop $25 for that shirt at some point.
I recently learned watching an episode of Law and Order: Criminal Intent that you can't eat dog food because it has bone meal in it, and it will kill you after a long period of time of eating it.
Really?
So just in case, a little PSA for your listeners.
Yeah,
Lay off the dog food. You're going to mix it up a little bit.
Okay. So this movie, going back to I didn't see this movie. Well, okay, I saw it as a kid, but I remember going into like a Blockbuster or something, and it was labeled Mad Max 2, and I didn't really get it. I remember, and this is like in high school or whatever at the time when we were hitting Blockbuster, but and I didn't actually see the first one until after that. Like I was like, what the heck? There's a second movie. So I went back and watched. I had seen this one obviously before I saw Mad Max, and there's sequels too. We're not going to get into. I mean, there's like your favorite Tina Turner and Thunderdome, and there's the one that was just done here recently in 2015. Was it Fury Road?
Yeah, that's a great movie.
Really good. Oh my god.
Yeah, it was really well done.
Yeah, it was great. But if you had a favorite, what was your favorite character from this movie? Maybe a favorite moment.
Jeez. Yeah, I'll say either the dog food eating, or remember when he throws that thing and chops that dude's hands off?
Oh, when the kid throws the thing and he tries to catch it?
Yeah.
Yeah. The boomerang?
That part was pretty memorable for me. I like that.
Yeah. That's again, Chaka was, I love the kid. I don't know why. Maybe because he...
Is that his name?
No, Chaka's from Land of the Lost.
I thought it was a Shaka Khan reference. I was like, her hair looks nothing like that. No. You're remembering it wrong.
You know what I found out today? Shaka Khan, like one of her big famous songs is I Feel For You. I didn't know that Prince actually recorded that song before she did back in 1979 off his debut album.
Wow.
Yeah, and it sounds very similar. Like the melody's the same. It doesn't have all the crazy, Beat Street kind of breaking sound effects and stuff like that.
Give me a little sample of it. Just give me a little bit.
I feel for you.
Yeah, there it is. There it is.
Think I love you. Yeah,
and that's
all I got.
That's all you can do. I think it's a copyright violation. You go any further.
Yeah.
Hey, just so you remember, Ready Player One's that direction. It's that direction.
All right. Let's so anyways, what I'm trying to think what else here. She was wearing the gloves. It's a minor reference, but that punk look was so prominent right in the 80s. Everybody was doing it, and we'll talk more about that later in the next episode. Actually, we're going to talk about mohawks, which kind of feeds into all this as well. So one thing that did strike with me, or I guess resonate with me in this one was in Mad Max and in this setting, anytime you went out into the Badlands, or whatever, you ran the risk of being attacked. And this is similar to later on when Wade decides to leave Oklahoma. The stacks are gone. He decides to leave and he wants to go to Columbus or be closer to GSS and all that, right? He talks about this, how he's trying to get on a bus and he's got to have armored guards with him and stuff, because once you leave the confines of a city like this, all bets are off. And I'm pretty sure this is exactly what Ernie Klein is trying to channel here, is this kind of post-apocalyptic. You're probably going to get run over, killed by pirates, marauders, that kind of thing. But that's what I always had in my mind, at least when I read that particular part of the novel. All right, let's see. I guess the only other thing I want to mention, there were two things, and we've talked about this already in the show for Road Warrior. Gamma World is a role-playing game by TSR, came out in 1978, and Car Wars, which we talked about with Neil, and that was in 1980 by Steve Jackson Games. Those games were huge, draw a lot of inspiration from the first movie, and then obviously the Road Warrior as well. So, okay, so let's talk about the last reference in that first quote, and that's Ray-Ban shades. And these are the Wayfarers. I mean, Ray-Ban does a lot of stuff. I imagine they're Wayfarers. That's kind of what I envisioned when I saw this. These glasses were originally designed by Raymond Stigman back in 1952. They were real popular in the 50s. They kind of died out in the 60s. Excuse me. And then the sales skyrocketed in 1981 because of this movie right here, The Blues Brothers. Now, they dropped off again. The crazy thing about this is, like, Ray-Ban signed a kind of an exclusive deal with, like, the city of Burbank, California. And in that deal, it said that anytime there were movies being made or they were affiliated in some way, they had to include Ray-Ban shades in some way. Huh. So this led to, like, a huge increase. I think by 1981, like at the end of 1981, they went from like 18,000 pairs to 1.5 million by 1987. And there were a crap ton of movies that were made between 81 and 87 where you see these glasses because of this particular reason alone. So just quickly, what are some of the movies? Like, and I've got some queued up here, but if you think about 80s movies, can you think of other ones where you saw the Wayfarer glasses?
Off the top of my head, sure. We can go with Risky Business.
Risky Business is one.
Definitely has one. I want to say Real Genius. There's a pair of Wayfarers in there also.
There may be.
Karate Kid? I don't know. At this point, I'm just making things up. So you can show some slides and let's. Oh, well, yeah.
Breakfast Club? Breakfast Club. Yeah. There's a pair of Wayfarers. Let's see. There's your Risky Business one. Yeah, we knew about that one. Here's Reservoir Dogs. Yeah. I mean, they've got a couple different types of Ray-Bans, but that's a great movie. And what's this, 80? Like, this is either late 80s.
Yeah, it's late 80s.
Early 90s.
Yeah, this is my favorite Quentin Tarantino movie by far.
And there's your boy.
Yes. And this has got to be around the Dream a Little Dream of Me phase.
Yeah.
It's got to be post Lost Boys.
Yeah. This is Corey Feldman, by the way.
Corey Feldman. He's a heck of a thespian and a fine musician as well. If you ever get a chance to see his Good Morning America stuff, it's the stuff of legends.
Yeah. Well, the last thing on these is I never owned a pair of them. I love the glasses. I've just never owned. Have you ever owned a pair?
I own at least 30 pairs of Wayfarers. I only wear like 2 style of glasses, and most of my glasses are Wayfarers.
Really? So you're like Taylor Swift, because she's got like a massive collection of Wayfarer glasses.
Oh, mine aren't real though, most of them, right? So I went down to Mexico one time. Yeah. I went to Mexico and I forgot to bring sunglasses with me. So going to the store and I'm like, hey, how much for these glasses? And they're like, oh, those are $10. And I'm not going to pay $10 for a pair of sunglasses in Mexico. And they're like, no, for the box. So I have 25 pairs of imitation Wayfarers. They're not logo. This is not a violation, but like in 3 different colors. So if you ever come to my house and you don't have sunglasses, just reach in that box and grab you a pair. Take them with you. They're yours. It's a parting gift.
Everybody gets one. Currently, they run about $154. So if you're looking for
not in Mexico.
Yeah. All right, let's get into She-Ra, Princess of Power. So this is the references. Think what you want, She-Ra. I said, moving past her. Maybe I'll run into you off-world sometime. We can duke it out then. I gave her a small wave. See you around. So She-Ra, Princess of Power. This is obviously a cartoon series, ran between 1985 and 1987. I think you've got more on this, though, so take it away.
Yeah, this is my wife's favorite cartoon. So my wife doesn't watch a lot of cartoons, but she does own the DVD collection of She-Ra. And in fact, in San Antonio, when I was growing up, we didn't actually get He-Man on Saturday mornings. We got She-Ra. So I actually saw more She-Ra than I ever have seen He-Man cartoons growing up. I do know that
He-Man was in the afternoon, by the way. He-Man was a Monday through Friday show that came out like when you got home from school. It was on one channel for 30 minutes, and it was when it first came out. And this is like 85, 86. It was like right when you got home, this thing was on, or you were catching the very end of it, and then they moved it a little bit later. But anyways, go ahead.
It always seemed to me like you were on one of two at the time. You were either a He-Man person or you were a G.I. Joe person, and I was always a G.I. Joe person. So I didn't know guys that had like both of them. You either had one or the other.
Yeah.
And I owned no He-Man or She-Ra toys that I will admit to in public. Little known fact that She-Ra's original name was going to be She-Ro, and He-Man's was going to be Hero. See what they did there? So then they were going to make her She-Ro, but then apparently someone in Latin America or anyone in Europe who speaks a Latin-based language said, no, it'd have to be a Ra because it's going to have to end in the feminine. So there you go.
Well, does this guy know how to party or what?
I'm here all day, folks.
Yeah. So the show was created by Larry DiTillo, and this was surprising to me as I was doing it, because I didn't watch She-Ra either. My sister watched it, and me and my younger brother would just kind of make fun of her for watching it. But I will say this, and I will admit this: the story seemed more interesting to me than the He-Man ones. And I know that's probably blasphemous. Mike's going to be all pissed off that I said that, but it's true. And I credit this now. When I was doing the research, I didn't realize J. Michael Straczynski actually did the writing for this, and he is like one of my favorite Spider-Man authors. And he's done Marvel, and he was involved with the I think it was the Ninja Turtles, and a number of other like great cartoons that, at the surface, they're very kiddie, but the underlying stories and the themes and the messages and all that are really substantial, and it all stems from people like him who were writing at the time and doing these cartoons. So.
So I totally watched She-Ra, and I watched it like a crazy person because it had that little dude. What was his name? Like
Orko?
Loki or something? No, that wasn't an Orko from He-Man.
I don't know.
No, the one with the rainbow hair. The dude that was like, "Did you find me? Today She-Ra learned about friendship."
It's right here. It's this guy right here, the owl-looking thing with the ears.
Yeah, with the ears. Yeah, that thing. Yeah, that guy down there. And he was like hidden in episodes, so he had like focus. I'd like watch it like a crazy person to see if I could find him. I didn't really care about the PSA he was going to blab to me at the end of the show, but I did like that. Have you, I was going to ask you, have you followed the new She-Ra and Princesses of Power?
No.
The reboot?
No, I heard it was good, but I've only spoken to one person who liked it. And only one person who's actually seen it, so to be fair.
So, I've seen a couple of episodes. I know a lot of what it's getting some backlash because of the whole SJW approach of making sure every nationality has been represented amongst the princesses. Well, Disney did it, so whatever, right? But I guess their point was when you watch the original She-Ra, with one rare exception, it was just you could do that whole thing from Chasing Amy at that point.
Oh, I see. No, I know I heard about I don't know, feedback they were getting as well, but no, I've never seen it. In this one, the original one, like it was all the differences, and there's a lot of them, or like similarities. The power of Grayskull versus the honor of Grayskull. All she had to do was hold her sword up, where He-Man had to like actually point it at Battle Cat or whatever his cat is to turn it into a Battle Cat. But she had a lot of other powers too, like she could fly, she could turn into a jaguar. I mean, they were just kind of all over the place. And there was one. This is the last thing I'll say, because I was like, what in the world? When I was going in here, I guess they had done a Christmas special.
Yeah.
What is that about? It was like a 45-minute cartoon where somehow she went to, or they end up coming to Earth, and I got 10, 20 minutes into it, and I was like, I just tapped out. I couldn't take it anymore. But
oh, okay. But you'll see the Star Wars Christmas special in
Oh yeah, all day long.
That's unwatchable.
I was talking about it in great detail last night, as a matter of fact.
That's sad on many, many levels. Hey, last She-Ra fact for you. So if following up on the movie with the fine actor Dolph Lundgren, they had considered doing a movie version of She-Ra also. It was scrapped, but they kept the majority of the script for a 1995 movie called Galaxis. So if you find that, that was originally intended to be the She-Ra live action movie. So
Really?
yeah, go find it.
That's similar to Cyborg. Cyborg was the Jean-Claude Van Damme movie that was done by Canon Films. And
Yep.
that was all footage. So they were going to do, I think, Master of the Universe 2. And they had already started all the props and the costumes and everything. And then that got scrapped. Canon just went debunk. So they repurposed all of it. And what you see now in the film Cyborg is a lot of the stuff that was going to be in part in Masters of the Universe 2. So very similar. That's weird. I guess that was just a thing they did back then. I don't know.
Yeah.
All right. Let's talk some music next. Let's talk about Howard Jones. And the reference here is from, let's see, he was talking about her and he says, she was even cooler in person than I imagined. I was dying to spend more time with her. I wanted, as the 80s poet Howard Jones would say, to get to know her well. If I left now, I might never run into her again. So Howard Jones he's still around. He was born in 1955. He's been around. He's still around to this day. Still making music, as a matter of fact. But he was a British singer, songwriter, who had 15 top 40 singles between 1983 and 1992. His highest charting single was No One Is to Blame, which reached number 4 in the U.S. charts. He has a total of 13 studio albums, the most recent was Transform, which came out in 2019. And the reference of Get to Know Her Well comes from the 1984 single Like to Get to Know You Well, which was released off the 1985 album Dream into Action. Now, that song was actually originally dedicated to, I think, the Olympics of 1984, which I guess I don't really see it, but okay, that's what he says. And the movie ended up showing up like in Better Off Dead, starring John Cusack. Your homework was to listen to this one album, the album Dream into Action. Had you heard the album before, and what did you think about it as you were listening? I'm sure you listened to it all the way back from El Paso.
Yeah, no, I actually did. I like Howard Jones. We actually got to an artist that I'm pretty familiar with.
What?
Yeah, I'm not going to sit here and pretend like I like every deep cut B side. Like, I'm not like you, where like my favorite song is something he recorded when he was 12. No, I mean, so my favorite song is No One Is to Blame, but that's not on this album in the version that 90% of the world recognizes, right? So the version that was originally released was later remastered by Phil Collins, and Phil Collins made the mix that was not even put on wax until like a reissue like 3 years later.
Yep.
But this is a good album. I think it's what's awesome about this album is was the follow-up to a hugely successful first album.
Yeah.
But in its first album, he used a series of co-writers. He wrote this album completely on his own. He's so honest about this. If you see him in interviews and you listen to Howard Jones talk about this album, he was touring because he still had all these smash hits coming off of his first album. So as he's traveling the world, he's just like, he's Emineming it. He's just like writing songs and music, after shows when he can squeeze it in. And then eventually, releases this, and it turns out to be his most successful album to date.
Yeah, no, I really like No One Is to Blame as well. And the version that you're talking about, I hear it a lot. Like I hear it in like TV shows even today, and it's just very casually in the background, very unassuming in the background of modern television, which is great. And it's been done many, many times in terms of covers. What Is Love is another one that I like, and that's not the Hadaway version. No,
that's fantastic.
That is not what I'm talking about. And then Things Can Only Get Better is another good one. That's off of Dream into Action. But yeah, this album and the one before it, they're great. If anybody's looking for like, hey, I really want to hear what the 80s sounded like, this is one of those albums that I would say this is a good kind of slice of life of what music was really like at the time, because he's got a lot of great lyrics, the melodies, the harmonies that he's got in there, the use of a lot of the instruments at the time, a lot of synth. Synthesized music instruments as well. So it's good stuff. And I don't really have anything to say about it. Like I can't even rag on this guy because he's just so like, he's humble. He had started a restaurant at one point that didn't work out, but he lives a pretty straight life and seems pretty down to earth. So there's no like dirt on him whatsoever. So
no, he's a Welsh vegan Buddhist, and I think he's the only one on the planet that can even claim that. Right? It's like you're making the world's most insane Mad Lib. All right, pick a religion. All right, what do you eat?
What do you eat? I guess the only thing was, I found this, which is, you know, it gets the 80s, so you get a free pass,
Albert
right?
is showing a photo of Howard Jones
He's got a
with bleached hair.
scarf. Yeah, bleached hair, scarf, red
Yeah, I got
glasses.
he's got the Wayfarers on.
Yep. Ish. Okay.
Ish. Mexican Wayfarers.
All right. Next one. We're going to talk about the action cards or her contact card again. So this is we've got a picture here of Kenner Star Wars action figures. The reference says she stretched out her racing gloved hand and offered me one of her contact cards. You could design your card and to look just about anything. Art3mis had coded hers to look like a vintage Kenner Star Wars action figure still in the blister pack. Now, Kenner Star Wars action figures, I was really struggling with like, okay, how in the world do we even tackle this and talk about it and not take up 2 hours, right? So high level, 1978 to 1985 is all I'm focusing on. There was plenty of other action figures that came out afterwards, but we're focusing primarily on the original trilogy here. So in that span of about 7 years, there was a total of they made a killing off this, right? Lucas made a ton of money off the action figures. I think off the movies he did like 7 billion. Off the action figures he did like a total of 14 billion. So twice the amount of money. There's over 100 Star Wars action figures that were released between 1977 and 85. Of the 100, there was 96 that were officially released on a card back, and then you get into like some other ones. And I've actually brought some. I mean, I've got like the original Snaggletooth here. I know you've got a Chewbacca that you take around and take pictures with. I don't know if you got him with you here, but that's that one. And then I've got the blue Snaggletooth, which came with the Cantina only. So this was, they had already made this character, and they said, no. The movie's coming out, and he's going to look like this guy right here in the red, and he's half the size. So they ended up, this is kind of a rarity. And I've got a whole bunch of other ones that are just laid out here. I'm not going to pull them up. But the action, the really interesting thing about the action figures, if you get a chance, I just want to plug The Toys That Made Us on Netflix. Have you had a chance to watch that series?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Like they do a great job with all of them. Even the toys that I didn't really care much about, but the Star Wars one is interesting. And it's primarily focused, I think, around, just around how Kenner got started and the lucrative deal that Kenner had initially and then was forced to give up almost at the very end when they had to renegotiate a contract right before the prequels came out. And that really kind of turned the tide in George Lucas's favor and allowed him to kind of make a lot more money. But I don't know what. I guess let's just talk just general action figures or with Star Wars action figures. Do you still have these? Do you collect them? I know I mentioned the Chewbacca one, but and maybe can you talk about what you do with that guy?
Yeah, I think I have like a dozen action figures, like first and second gen, at the office at any given time. But Chewbacca's for sure is my favorite. If I see one in the wild, I'm going to snatch it up for sure. I've got no fewer than 40 Chewbacca. Like the Chewbacca. That's
Chewbacca.
Not a race. That guy doesn't even know what he's talking about. He referred to the race as Chewbacca.
Chewbacca, yeah. That's how we picture it. Go ahead, keep going.
Yeah, all them Chewbaccas. Anyway, so you're right. When we travel, just about everyone on my team does have a Chewbacca, and then we typically take pictures because we travel alone most of the time. But so we take pictures of Chewbacca all over the world or with celebrities and post them to social media. There is a website out there, but I can't promote it.
That's fair. One of the interesting things that stood out for me in that documentary was I always wondered about the size, about why they came up with 3.75 inch action figure, because at the time GI Joes were out, right? That was 12 inch, and they wanted to go smaller because they had to be able to bring the Star Wars world to action figures, and so they couldn't make 12 inch figures with proportionate 12 inch vehicles, right? So they had to shrink it down, and so what they ended up doing is they actually went to this guy they call the Bear, who his name is Bernard Loomis, who was kind of like the main head person at Kenner. Big dude. And the guy walks in and is like, hey, we need to shrink this down. What size do you want? And he literally took his 2 fingers and spread them apart. And he said, that's the size right there. He held them up. That's the size. That guy pulled out, I think his name was like Okada, pulls out a little ruler and goes and measures his hand, his finger to thumb. And that came out to be 3.75 inches. And they literally ran with that. And that's how we got the size that we got for the action figures. So there you go. Worthless trivia.
Fascinating. So I don't know this. I would imagine the newer ones are, but like where the first generation, and because I know you have a much more extensive collection than I do, are those to relative scale? Like, is Princess Leia shorter than
No, they were all cut
Han
the same.
Solo? Oh, okay.
Yeah, it was later on they did like Chewbacca is even like if I got a Greedo, they're a little bit. This one, the Chewbacca's a little bit taller than like the original Greedo. You can't see Greedo because I got a green screen. Look at that.
Oh, that's crazy, man.
Here's the original Obi-Wan. So he was kind of the exception. Vader was the exception, but for the most part, they were pretty much all the same size. That was kind of the baseline that they started with. And I picked these two cards because one, that picture I've talked about before on Cantina Cast, I always liked the picture of the stormtroopers over here where they're kind of holding those blasters. They look so cool and menacing, and that's surely not what they are. And then I picked the other one because it's Luke Skywalker, and he's always been my favorite character. So, but yeah, those are the original ones there. Okay, let's talk about something else.
Okay. That was the smoothest transition ever.
I know, it really was.
And now let's talk about anything.
We did talk. We're not going to talk about adventure because we've covered that already. We covered it in episode 2, Electric Boogaloo. So if you get a chance, you can go back and listen to what we mentioned in adventure, and then obviously it's in the Ready Player One novel, Ready Player One movie, quite extensively. So, but let's talk about Rayman, which is another reference that comes up. This says, "Listen," I said, it was really luck. I've got a knack for classic arcade games. That's my specialty. I shrugged. Stop hitting yourself like Rayman, okay? And it's a very, again, loose reference. There's not a lot there. But when he says that, everybody knows the banging on the head that Dustin Hoffman's character does in the movie Rayman. So Rayman was a movie that came out in 1988. It starred Dustin Hoffman, Tom Cruise. It was directed by Barry Levinson. And the premise, let me read this real quick here. This is something I wrote. It's about a jerkface named Charlie who, after being shunned from his dead and estranged father's $3 million trust, discovers that he's got an older brother who's a savant named Raymond, and who has also been entrusted with the money. Once he discovers this, he, of course, kidnaps his brother and essentially tries to hold him in for ransom in exchange for half of the $3 million. Over the course of a week, and due to his brother being too afraid to fly, Charlie and Raymond travel cross-country in a 1949 Buick Roadmaster, only 8,000 were ever made, where the two begin to form a loving and bonding relationship, culminating in Charlie using his brother as a tool to net nearly 90,000 in Vegas winnings by exploiting his savant talent of counting cards. In the end, though, Charlie discovers what's always been missing in his life was family, and he determines that no amount of money in the world would ever take the place of the bond that he had created with his long-lost brother, despite maybe in light of his shortcomings. After a failed attempt to gain custody of Raymond, Charlie is never awarded any of the money. Raymond returns to the institution, and Charlie is left a new man, strong of heart, and better character, all thanks to Rain Man, not Raymond. So this was one that came out, I think you and I were probably just going into high school, if I do my math right. And I did not see this in the theater. I think I saw this on HBO, cable television, VHS, I don't know, somewhere. It was after it was out of the theater. And I remember enjoying this movie a lot. And it won a crap ton of awards, right? And I love this movie. I can tell you, I had not seen this movie until I watched it last week ahead of this show. And I don't know why. It's a great movie, but it's not one that I go back to very often. But what do you think about it?
What are you saying, that you hadn't seen this movie since last week, or?
No, I hadn't seen it since like 1990.
1990.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is a great movie. I mean, it's highly quotable, this film. It should be on everyone's pop culture list only because Dustin Hoffman's performance is incredible. Yeah. And Tom Cruise, the part where he gets out of the car and he's frustrated and he's just going crazy. You're not going to see that from him again until he's on Katie Couric's couch or Matt Lauer's or whatever.
Oprah Winfrey, yeah.
I think no, it wasn't. Was it a Matt Lauer interview? I don't know. But that's the level of crazy that he goes outside the car, where they're talking about having to go back to Kmart in Cincinnati.
Yes. They're pulled over on the side of some country, in the middle of BFG, and he gets out of the vehicle.
Albert, they're too tight.
Too tight.
It does bring up a question. I know you and I used to exchange clothing quite a bit. So for those that don't know, we didn't have a ton of money going to our senior year, but we did have a master plan. which is that we would work all of our junior year in summer, right? Both of us. And then we would compile our money and then buy one massive wardrobe that we could share. Fantastic.
Minds have melded.
We have absolutely never shared underwear that I can recall.
No, we've never shared underwear. Let's be very clear about that.
And I don't wear underwear.
It's exactly right.
Find it restricting.
If you go back and look like at our pictures, like all through high school, you can see me wearing a shirt, and then 2 pictures later, you've got the shirt or the pants or whatever. But yeah, it's a true story. So back to Rayman. This won Best Picture, Best Actor in a Leading Role, Dustin Hoffman, Best Director, Best Writing, Original Screenplay. It always ranks like in the top 10 of movies for 1988. I don't know where it falls, like in the top AFI's like 100 and all that. I don't know if it ever.
I don't think it's in AFI's 100 because I recently went through that like 2 years ago and just watched them sequentially, 100 to 1. And I don't recall this being in there because I hadn't seen it probably in 10, 15 years. And then like in preparation for the show, I only watched the scenes that I thought were the funny scenes wherever Dustin Hoffman's just going crazy, like the pancake scene at the cafe.
Yeah.
Are there any scenes in this that really stand out to you or resonate with you?
The one that I get choked up on and I mean this sincerely is when when Tom Cruise's character Charlie makes a joke and Raymond for the first time smiles and says, it's all the very end. Like when you really get that they've now kind of bonded and he really, Raymond really relies on Charlie and Charlie on Raymond. And you realize they've kind of come together as a brother, as brothers. But in that moment, when he makes that comment about Charlie, whatever made a joke, I don't know what it is. It's just the way it's Dustin Hoffman and how he delivers them. He's absolutely impeccable throughout all of this movie. But that's one, I think an iconic scene for me is them coming down the escalator, which is why I included it over here.
But there's some wacky music going on. Like, I don't know what it was about the late 80s, early 90s. Whenever there was going to be a reveal, like a hot chick reveal or a guy who's transformed, like in this movie, they had to have like this tempo music in the background, but it was like they couldn't get someone famous to do it. And so it's a mess. To me, it really doesn't feel in place with the rest of the film. It doesn't have the same effect as, say, like the Michael J. Fox scene in Secret to My Success or like the Risky Business scene. It doesn't have that feel to it to me, only because I think the music's a little off. I don't know.
Well, it's funny you say that because the person that did the music, and I didn't do too much research on this. I was curious. Maybe you can look it up. It's actually Hans Zimmer. And
really?
And this is a Hans Zimmer, like, you think about it, 88, like we don't, at least for me, I mean, I'm not the most educated person, but for Hans Zimmer, I don't remember him being a big thing until like Gladiator or was Hunt for Red October, I think was a big one he did, which was before this, I think. But anyways, it didn't sound like Hans Zimmer. To me, that music sounded very new age, almost like you would see like I don't know. I don't want to start showing my new age trivia here, but like Yoshiki, Enya's in there. I don't know. There's like even Yanni to some extent. Some of the stuff that he was doing there around that time, but it was very new age sounding. And I get what you're talking about. It does sound a little out of place in that scene particularly.
Interesting.
What about you? Do you have a favorite moment here?
Yeah, the pancake scene is my favorite, where he's asking for the maple syrup, and they're like, "We haven't ordered yet." I can't do the whole shtick right now, but he's so upset that he can't get the maple syrup, and he's like, "I'm going to be here. I'm not going to have maple syrup for my pancakes. They'll bring the maple syrup after we order. How's it going to be too late, Ray? How's it going to be too late? It's going to be fine, Ray. No, I'm not going to be able to finish my pancakes. I don't have the maple syrup, and the maple syrup has to come before." Like the lunacy of, I haven't even ordered yet. Yep. But I need the maple syrup.
It's just the anxiety of it all. Yeah.
And you can see that build like all the way to the scene where he's in the car and he gets out, where it's just like this series of frustrations. And you're just like, oh my God, how's he going to get past this? Those are my favorite parts of the movie because to me, it feels the most real. Like that's just how you would be if you were that guy. And I guess to some extent, maybe I am.
Yeah, I think you might be a little bit. So. Okay, so one last thing before we move on from Rayman, the movie itself is actually based on a real life person by the name of Kim Peek.
Hmm.
Kim Peek is known as a mega savant. And now, so in Dustin Hoffman's character, there's some very similarities there, but he's kind of a mix of a lot of different people. And in the movie, I don't know, they never call him a savant. They always say that he's he's autistic.
Yeah, he's on the
Right?
spectrum.
Yeah, he's on the spectrum somewhere, and that's true. I mean, it's kind of one and the same, but savant means something entirely different, right? But this person, the real life person, Kim Meek, is astounding. It's just incredible what this guy could do. He was able to remember things as early as I think about 18 months old. First off, he could speed read through books in 1 hour, and the way he read the books was his left eye would read the left page of the book, while his right eye simultaneously read the right page of the book. So he was reading with both eyes 2 pages at a time, and that's why he was able to read so fast. And then he could accurately recall, it's estimated, accurately recall details of up to 12,000 books. So everything he read just stood in there. And the idea that he was counting cards and all that, that was actually pulled from another savant, other stories of savants that were out there. And there's some really great and interesting things. And one last thing that I learned as part of this research about savants that I had no idea is like, you can be born into it, right? You're born with these natural talents. And there's always a trade-off, unfortunately. But there are people that are like, they're called, what do they call it? Now I just forgot the term. They're not like born into it. They're like acquired savants, I think is what the term is. And half the people that I looked at that were acquired savants, they were struck by lightning.
Really?
Like, yeah, they get struck by lightning, and then suddenly they're composing incredible pieces of music via piano or orchestras or violins or whatever else. Some of them acquire like these mathematical talents where they're able to compute crazy numbers really high at high levels that they never could before and all that. But I don't know what it is about lightning, so I don't know. Anyways, it was just very interesting. So, all right, well let's.
So that's Albert's PSA. Stand outside and get struck by lightning.
It does you good.
Hey, so if you're, I'm not even going to go into it, but if you are one of the acquired savants, do you lose something in a trade-off there, other than the fact that you're struck by lightning?
Yeah,
I mean,
hearing loss,
socially well developed, but otherwise, I just picked up a little genius +4.
Yeah, the trade-offs are, loss of hearing, loss of eyesight, loss of body hair, all that.
Now, I got a friend out in Louisiana said he was struck by lightning twice on the same day. I'm not making that up. That's a true story.
That is not true.
That's what he said.
I mean, your story's probably true. He's a damn liar.
That's what he tells me. Highly reputable guy.
Oh, I bet. Okay, let's talk about Gunsmoke only briefly because I just want to make sure that it's mentioned in here. He says the reference here is "Get the hell out of Dodge," and the quote is, "Then I'd invite a few of my closest friends to come aboard along with a team of doctors and scientists, and we'd all get the hell out of Dodge, leave the solar system, and start looking for extrasolar Earth-like planets." And we're going to talk about Gunsmoke later because this comes up again in chapters 14, 23, and 31. This phrase of "get the hell out of Dodge." But just for now, it's a reference to this Western TV show called Gunsmoke that aired from 1952 to 1961. Can't wait to get into that one.
Yeah, it's going to be a blast.
It's going to be a blast. All right, Ms. Pacman's up.
Excellent.
Oh, boy. So this one, here's a reference. She stopped and stared at me. After a few seconds, she let out a long sigh. Why couldn't it be Centipede or Ms. Pacman or Burger Time? Then I'd probably have already cleared the first gate by now. So there are a couple of in there, but we've already talked about Centipede and we've already talked about Burger Time in previous episodes, but we had actually not really dove into Ms. Pacman. I think we talked about Pacman, but not necessarily Ms. Pacman, and I was saving it for this episode. So this was published by Midway. This was the official sequel to the 1980 phenomenon Pac-Man.
Wasn't intended to be.
It wasn't intended to be. That's right, and that's where the really interesting story lies. I'll paraphrase this because I don't want to read this out, but what happened was, at the time, if you remember, people were making these expansion kits, right? These conversion kits for arcade games. And
right. The purpose of an expansion kit at the time was you had, let's say, the best-selling video game of all time, which was the Pac-Man console, right? But what owners of Pac-Man and games that were popular at the time realized that one quarter would continue to get people further as players got better at games. Well, that's not good for business, right? Like, I can't just have people playing Pac-Man for 2 hours on one quarter because they've learned all the patterns associated with Pac-Man. So they would turn to companies to build these expansion packs, or enhancement packs is what they would call them. And they would build enhancement packs for cabinets that could be quick change outs and increase the level of difficulty, make the game harder. In most cases, they didn't change the graphics, but there was a company that was called General Computer Corporation. And General Computer Corporation recognized that this was a gap that existed. These two guys were really young that came up with this company. When they looked at Pac-Man, they decided that they could just recode it, just some basic recoding to change the maps up a little bit, fix some of the glitches that people were using to exploit to play the game longer. And alas, out comes Crazy Otto. Yeah. So Miss Pac-Man wasn't even out, right? So I'll let you pick it up there after the Crazy Otto part.
So Midway got wind of this, or not Midway, but the Bally, or not Bally, my goodness, the parent company, Namco, right? They got wind of this, and they're like, "Whoa, time out. This is our game. What are you doing coming out with this Crazy Otto game?" And so, Midway picks up the rights to it. They buy the rights from this game company that did the conversion kit, and they decide to go ahead and market this thing and go back up to Namco and say, "Look at this thing. Look how much better this is." And so Namco eventually buys into this, and at the time, they were actually working on a true sequel to Pac-Man. I think it was going to be Super Pac-Man, if I have my history right. But that wasn't ready yet. That was still early in development. So all in, they signed off on it, said that's fine. And because of this, there were the laws that came out afterwards that said, okay, from now on, you can't go out and create conversion kits without the parent company's consent, right? So that was kind of a byproduct of this kind of what happened here with Ms. Pac-Man.
Yeah, one of the cool things about GCC is that they were actually aggressive in it. Bally and Midway were both, and Namco were going after all these clone machines for Pac-Man that were out there. And there were tons of clones out there that were using these conversion kits. But GCC didn't wait to get sued. They actually reached out to North American Midway and said, "Hey, we've got this. Is it cool if we do this?" And this is some random Crazy Otto trivia. But when there was exactly one official Crazy Otto cabinet that was made, and the rest of the Crazy Ottos that were just conversions of Pac-Man. So Time Magazine was doing an article on the most popular arcade games at the time, and of course Pac-Man was number one, but the photo they took for that article was Crazy Otto. And Crazy Otto is Pac-Man with legs. So if you ever want to say, "Oh, Pac-Man with legs," that is I guess that's what the transformation or evolution from Pac-Man to Miss Pac-Man look like.
Yeah, which is I've got up here now. You've got her. You can kind of see her legs, and this guy gawking at her. I don't know if he's gawking at her or gawking at the Midway logo, but either way.
So, Albert, you have a preference between Pac-Man and Miss Pac-Man?
I probably like Miss Pac-Man. For me is like a better game.
It's a better game.
Yeah. It really is a better game. But I have the nostalgia of having my Pac-Man lunchbox and being a big fan of Buckner. What's his name? The guy that did Pac-Man Fever. I'm drawing a blank on his name now.
Oh yeah,
Buckner Garcia. Is that it? I don't know. Yep. Somebody will call me out on that later. But yeah, I mean, so I've got so my heart is kind of with Pac-Man, but my mind is with Ms. Pac-Man. And there were, I mean, they did a lot of great things. I mean, I've got one more thing here, kind of show the screen there, but didn't mean to do that. So we're looking at now kind of like the screen itself, and that's now that I'm looking at, that's not right. But anyways, so some of the differences, they did 4 mazes with alternating colors, right? So they added in the pink, the light blue, the brown, and the dark blue. 3 of the 4 mazes had 2 sets of warp tunnels rather than just 1 from the original. The walls were filled in, as you can kind of see in this picture, although that's not a legit picture, so I apologize. But the walls are kind of filled in, so it made it easier than with Pac-Man to be able to see where you are and relative to the walls and the ghosts and all that. The monster AI was improved quite a bit. The fruits randomly came into the screen rather than always being kind of in that one spot. There were some minor things, like they changed one of the ghosts was changed from Clyde later on to Sue.
Which was one of the GCC creators' sister's name.
Was it? I didn't know that. Oh, interesting. And then they had the cutscenes, right? That was my favorite part about this. Like, this is one of the first games. that was
Yeah, a
telling
lot
a
of people say
story.
this is the birth of the cutscene.
Yep. And I don't know if
So
that's true, but I know this. It definitely was. It had a huge impact in the arcade scene. I'll just leave it at that.
yeah, did they get married or did they just have the baby? I can't
Oh my
remember.
goodness! I don't think no, they don't get
Oh,
married, but it just shows them together and then
yeah,
with the baby.
they
So
oh sorry. They kiss in the one cutscene, and then the next cutscene, all out of wedlock, popping out little babies. What is happening here? Maybe the ghosts are the good guys.
maybe they were. I don't know.
I don't know. Give it to Disney; they'll rewrite it, make it that way.
But I mean, it had better sound, better sound effects as well. Yeah. Although I don't know.
So if you're buying the Nintendo version, and I got to throw my Nintendo plug in here, then you're going to want to get the Tengen version. It's way better. It's far more accurate than the official Nintendo version of the game. Like the color scheme, even though it's published by Namco, the color scheme for the levels isn't right.
You're talking about, the official one that was released?
Yeah, the official release.
Yeah, I've heard a lot of great things about that Tengen version. And I know it was like, I don't know why it took so long for Namco to get off their butts and release the NES version too, because I don't think it came out, I mean, maybe a year or two after the Tengen version, if I'm not mistaken.
Tengen gets a lot of heat, but frankly, they were producing high quality games. We'll cover that some other time.
Without the seal, yeah. We need to talk about that.
I mean, they're no wisdom tree. Nintendo jokes.
That's a deep cut.
I've got them all day.
And of course, Ms. Pacman was released on every freaking system ever released. The one cool thing about this, and I don't know how much weight is in this at all, but I think the one thing that I've read, and not in just as part of this research, this was kind of something I'd heard many, many times before, was that this was kind of this really opened the gate for women gamers to come into the arcade scene. And we've talked about this in the show. I remember going into arcades early 80s, and it was dude fest. A bunch of old dudes smoking, drinking. I don't think I ever saw females, but this was a game that allowed. It was kind of an entry, a gateway for women to come in and start playing. And there are studies out there. There was one, again, I don't know how viable or official this thing is, but I know that they've talked about how it was primarily played by women gamers. So there was something about it, and I think that's a cool thing.
So I saw that cited a number of times while I was doing some research on the arcade side. Like I know the Nintendo history really well, but the thing that struck me about it is I didn't see that. Like it makes it seem like there was this
line of girls,
women. There were no. It was me and you. Like it was just a bunch of us sitting there playing a faster version of Pac-Man. I do not remember there being like when I watch Stranger Things, there's more women in those arcades, like little girls in that arcade, than I ever remember seeing when I was in an arcade at any point in my life.
No, I agree. That's my point. It's like I don't remember that, but okay, I wasn't. I was picking my nose, and so I wasn't. I'm not an expert.
I was going around and like putting my finger in the little holes to see if I could find a token.
Oh, because
I had no money.
Okay, we're going to move on from Miss Pac-Man because we'll talk a lot about Pac-Man here very soon once we get to later on. Okay, so one thing I want to just quickly talk about.
No.
Yeah. So there are a number of
picture of 2 Dungeons and Dragons modules. Folks, I want you to hold on.
This is so these are actually the expert rule set and the companion rule set from the original Dungeons and Dragons. I do want to talk about some of the spells because in this chapter and in a number of chapters they talk about the spells, and I actually am going to call. I hate to say this, but I think I may be calling Ernie Klein out on something he got wrong. But
here we go.
Yeah, I don't know if this is. Don't make a big deal about this, please, because I don't want to have him get mad at me. So let's talk about the barrier spell. So if you remember. Here's the reference. She's talking about she didn't want Parzival to leave, and so she throws up a barrier spell. It says, as she finished casting her spell, a giant stone wall appeared, completely covering the chamber's only exit. She cast a barrier spell. I was trapped inside the room. So this spell is the error here is that later on, well, not later on, in this chapter, when she pulls out her contact card, it says that she is a warrior mage. So that's a dual class character, and I will at some point probably get into this as well because I think later on it comes up. But in Dungeons and Dragons during this time, you could do something called dual class, where you could split off into 2 classes. You can't get to the level of a single spec class, but you could be pretty good at both and kind of level up that way, right? Well, the dual class that she is warrior / mage. The error that I think that's here is that the barrier spell, one, never appeared in Dungeons and Dragons or Advanced Dungeons and Dragons first or second edition. Okay. Two, this spell did appear in the companion set. So that's the aqua one that I've got here. And that spell is actually a clerical spell. So you could only cast that spell if you
worked in an office.
Right, clerical. Cleric spell. So the error is I don't think she would have been capable of it. Now, the argument could be, well, maybe she had a scroll. No, she can't, because actually the only people that can cast cleric scrolls are clerics themselves. So even if she was a mage or a warrior, she wouldn't have been able to cast this. So that's it. We're going to end the show right there on that note. So appreciate you guys jumping. No. All right. So then enough of that. The other reference in here is chaotic neutral. She mentions that. That's an alignment. She says, "You're evil. You know that?" He says, "You're evil. I know. You know that?" I said. She grinned and shook her head. Chaotic neutral sugar. And at some point, we probably need to talk about these. But that is a reference to Dungeons and Dragons. It's a reference to her alignment. Chaotic neutral people are like some of the worst people in the world. Like they're just one slightly shy of like true neutral. If you're true neutral, like you can't trust those people whatsoever. They could be good, they could be bad. Really depends on how they're feeling and whether they've had lunch. It's just hard.
I thought those were libertarians.
Yeah, very similar. And there's a number of other alignments which we won't get into. And then the last reference two more references here. Cure serious wounds is a spell. He says, okay. She actually sounded disappointed. I should probably prepare my joust match anyway. But here, let me hit you with a cure serious wound spell before you go. And so in Dungeons and Dragons, there's several levels of spells that you could cast. Again, she's casting a spell that a cleric would cast. I don't know how she's doing this as a mage or a warrior. That doesn't really make sense, but okay. And it could be just the Oasis allows it to. Don't get me wrong. But this was kind of like the next. There was only like one after this. I think it was like Cure Critical Wounds. I know there was another one called Cure Mortal Wound, I think, after that. But so this is a healing spell that she cast from Dungeons and Dragons. And then finally, the last thing is the Vorpal Blade. We didn't talk about this last episode, just in the interest of time. But this one is Art3mis looked like a formidable opponent, body armor, blaster pistols, and that Elva's sword she was carrying might have been Vorpal. If you had a Vorpal sword, what this allowed you to do is when you made your attack, you could roll dice, and depending on how you rolled, it would sever the head or sever an arm or a leg or some sort like that. And that's what the Vorpal piece comes from. All right.
Specifically through magical means. I don't know why I know that, but out of everything you just said, that's all I remember.
Good, because we're going to talk about something way more important now. Let's get into the Smurfs.
Albert has shown several images of Smurfs.
I know. I got a lot of questions about these guys.
Shoot me some questions.
Here's the reference. So Smurfs from 19. The reference is I rolled my eyes. Right, I said. And after you pull off that miracle, you can genetically engineer a bunch of Smurfs and unicorns to frolic around this new perfect world you've created. All right, Smurfs, 1958, created by, is it Peyo?
Peyo, yes.
Peyo? All right, take it away. Tell us all about Smurfs, because I got questions for you, man, and I need answers.
All right, well, I'm going to keep it really simple. Smurfs are a bunch of small... Look, if you don't know what a Smurf is, what are you doing listening to this show? Right? You got to know what a Smurf is. They live in Smurf Village, right? Their leader is Papa Smurf. Their nemesis is Gargamel and his cat...
Azrael.
That's right. And that's all you really need to know. Every episode is around that. There's a bunch of PSAs built into each one of the episodes. So originally it was a comic strip, and none of the Smurfs in the original comic strip had definable character traits like you saw in the cartoons that came later. They were all just a bit mischievous. They were all very jokey Smurf and would just constantly play tricks on each other. They didn't get their individualized identities until the cartoons. And the cartoons, there was exactly 99 before they started adding other Smurfs. So theoretically, Smurfette was going to be the 100th Smurf. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Albert and let's see if he can Smurf me on some Smurf trivia.
Oh, that sounds terrible.
You've been smurfed.
I've been smurfed. So the animated series ran 9 seasons, or a total of 256 episodes, and it does feel like this was on all the freaking time, like Saturday. Like, it was so popular that I remember it probably had like a 1 hour block in there at one point in Saturday morning cartoons because it was just that popular. The questions that I have around this is, I get that the character personalities were added later, and we saw this with like Transformers. We saw it with GI Joe, and that was just kind of the thing, right? Everybody had to have their own kind of unique personality, and then that's what we as Americans really like. And the more that they can make, the more that would turn into either advertising dollars because the show was becoming popular, or if they were to spin off toys, that would translate into people wanting to buy all these different toys because they were all different, right? So that I get all that. The things that really bothered me about this cartoon, and I watched it a lot, I really did. I really liked the cartoon. First off, I won't bash it. I thought all the voice acting was good. It's super cheesy, but as a kid, I loved it. I always had problems with like why Smurfette was the only woman or the only female, and I think later on they address this. I remember like when I was about to tap out of the Smurfs and said, "Smurfette, I've had enough of this." I thought they had introduced like another female, but
a couple actually.
Okay.
Sassy and Nanny were both introduced at the latter end of the series, but Smurfette is not a natural born Smurf. So Smurfette was actually created by Gargamel.
Oh, I remember the episode when
there was the episode where she was self-conscious about the fact that she wasn't a real Smurf. And I think what they did really good with the cartoon series is that they demonstrated that regardless of what your dominant personality trait was, and I know this is probably getting a little Myers-Briggs for a cartoon, that it really didn't matter. You bring value to the collective, right? But pure reliance on any one of those values can be a liability as well. And that's kind of how they built each episode, that nothing was perfect. You couldn't just rely even on Brainy Smurf, because even though that's a strength, if you just relied on Brainy Smurf, there would be a limitation. And it seemed like there was countless episodes where Papa Smurf was putting one of them in charge, and the village would fall completely apart until he came to the end and saved them with it. But there are some great episodes out there and some really great comic strips too. So are you familiar with the Purple Smurfs?
No.
So Purple Smurfs is supposedly...
Better tasting?
There is it's a story about how this infection occurs, and then the Smurfs, turn purple when they're infected, and then have the need to bite other Smurfs and then make them purple. And it predates George Romero's Night of the Living Dead. It does, but all the rules are the same. But in the course of the series, they addressed everything from like STDs and they're veiled PSAs, but they're out there. You can go find them.
I did not. Yeah, I didn't know. That went way over my head then, because I didn't realize they were doing any of that.
Well, of course not. What do we know about that?
Yeah.
Did you watch the live action movies? Did you watch either one of them?
I have not seen them. I've seen I remember the trailers, and I recall they didn't do very well. But beyond
the first
that,
one did okay. The first, I mean, you know how the first one did okay? Because there was a second one.
True.
Yeah, that's why there's not another Flash Gordon. But
yeah,
it's still an awesome movie to me.
So Smurfette was one thing that bothered me, and I quickly mentioned it just a minute ago, but like the idea that didn't he want to eat them all the time?
Occasionally, right? So it was weird. In the storytelling, they did two different things. So this primary motivation for wanting to capture the Smurfs was that he believed that as part of their DNA, like in their skin, that he could use it as alchemy to convert stone into gold. So that was the original reason he wanted to capture him. I don't know why he wanted to be rich. He looked like he had everything he needed, but whatever.
Yeah.
And then at other times, he wanted to have him a delicious Smurf snack. Makes no sense to me at all. You should eat that cat.
Yeah, no, that cat was wanting to eat him too. So that was the other thing. And then, I always wondered, like, even as a kid, I did wonder, even before Smurfette came around, was like, who's making these things? Like, how did they just born? They bred in like little blue tubes somewhere?
That I don't know.
And then you Smurfs would just show up. They would just show up.
Yeah, they just randomly showed up. Yeah, because they added a bunch of Smurfs toward the end of the show, and some of the other Smurfs left, and they picked up some new characters. But
They got the baby Smurf. I remember that. That was
oh
super
yeah,
annoying. You can see him there. I've got him up there. And that's again, this is about the time that I left the show. Like I was getting either too old or we didn't pay the cable bill. I don't know what it was, but something happened where I wasn't watching Smurfs anymore.
so they were supposed to reboot this show in 2018, and I don't think it happened. I haven't been following up on it. But I do like Smurfs. And if you're ever out on the internet, there are a ton of conspiracy theories out there that relate, the Smurfs to the Titans, Gargamel representing a Titan, and the Smurfs representing the gods. Yeah, because Gargamel, if you look at it from the Latin roots, is Gargos, right? Which means terrible in the same sense that, but this is back when terrible meant huge or big. Like the Tyrannosaurus Rex wasn't terrible. It was a terrible lizard, but terrible in the sense that it was huge.
Right.
Same with Gargamel, right? So that Gargos root is the same, that it just meant that he was way taller than they were. Just some useless Smurf trivia. You don't want to stay here much longer. You're going to want to take this train further.
Yeah, I don't know. I'd have to look into that one. That one's actually intriguing, that the parallel between that and the gods.
There's also someone who claims that they're all white supremacists because the hat that they are wearing is based on the same types of hats that were worn by Klansmen, and that the only person that has noticeable hair is Smurfette, and she has the Aryan white hair.
My
yellow
goodness.
Hair. I'm not kidding.
All right.
It's not on the internet.
With that, we're going to roll on past the Smurfs. All right, we're gonna get into our final topic of the evening. This is the Highlander movie. Okay, so quickly the reference. Greetings, I said, bowing slightly. I am Juan Sanchez Villalobos Ramirez. She smirked. Chief metallurgist to King Charles V of Spain. At your service, I replied, grinning. She caught my obscure Highlander quote, and she threw another right back at me. It was Art3mis, all right. Okay, so first up, we did talk about Highlander already. We talked about it in episode 3, which was called Highlander Too Lame, was the name of the title. But I wanted to talk about it again because, one, you and I have never talked about it. And I only really gave a kind of high-level overview of the movie then when we did, because it was really more about Highlander 2 and how terrible that was. And since we've done that episode in the last years, I've seen this movie a lot. And I actually liked it a lot more now than I probably ever did, because I wasn't a huge Highlander fan. I had seen it once. It was, again, another one of these things I rented and watched it. Was like, okay, that's kind of cool, but never really dug into it. And I've honestly kind of come to appreciate it a lot more. So, all right. So before we get started, let me give the brief synopsis, and then I want to go to you and kind of give me your favorite moments here. So Highlander, the original 1986, directed by Russell Mulcahy, I think is how you say his name. It's starring the Frenchman Christopher Lambert and James Bond. Highlander is a movie about Scottish immortal from 1536 who finds himself being hunted by other immortals throughout the years, looking to kill him in order to gain a power called the Quickening, an ability that could be used for good or to enslave the human race, and recklessly destroys everything around you, including buildings, glass windows, streetlights, and manhole covers. Early on in his immortal discovery, MacLeod befriends Don Juan Sanchez Villalobos Ramirez, a Spanish Egyptian who trains MacLeod in the ways of immortal lore and swordplay. And it's from it's from Ramirez, that the Spanish peacock, that he learns that the only way to die as an immortal is to be beheaded. The movie flashes back and forth between timelines, such as present-day New York, the Highlands of 1536, and even World War II. The movie ends with MacLeod facing off against the Kurgan, an immortal being hell-bent on eradicating all other immortals in order to gain the Quickening for nefarious reasons, but with MacLeod ultimately victorious, and with the Quickening power, he becomes the last remaining immortal, but now finds himself mortal, and with the ability to love, have babies, and use the knowledge to help the human race. This movie, I mean, come on. Like, it's got there's so much in this movie in terms of like how they came up with this story. And we can probably get into that. I mean, we could spend all day talking about how this was conceived and how it was developed and all that. But let's start with the movie itself. Are you a fan of this movie? Do you like it? What were your favorite moments in watching it? What's your experience?
Okay, so Sean Connery's one of my top 3 actors of all time. I'll watch anything with Sean Connery in it, even that terrible movie where he was like a bank robber. Anyway, so I love this, even though Sean Connery only has like a small part, and they filmed all of his scenes like in less than a week for the
Yeah.
film.
Yep.
I would say any scene that's got him in it, in both this and The Quickening, are going to be my favorite scenes. There are parts in it, like the first time I heard Queen's "Who Wants to Live Forever." That is just a great piece of writing. So I mean, I love that sound. The soundtrack for the movie is fantastic, and maybe just because Queen has this whole Highlander, Flash Gordon thing going on, but unlike Flash Gordon, they weren't going to they were only going to record like a song for this, but they got to see the cut of the film.
Yeah,
and they were
inspired.
like, dude, yeah, it was like, I could write a bunch of stuff for this, which is fascinating to me. I don't know if did y'all talk about this last time? Did you know that he couldn't speak English too well when he made this movie?
Well, no, we didn't. So we didn't talk about it, but yes, that is very true. He did not. He could not speak, and he got like a crack. I don't know how long it took, but he was quick, and it shows.
Yeah, it's terrible. The acting is terrible. So originally, Connor McLeod was going to be played by what's his name, Kurt Russell. Yeah, so Kurt Russell was going to do Highlander and be Connor McLeod, but his then wife, girlfriend, Goldie Hawn said, nah, you don't want to do this, and told him, you need to take this other movie, which is going to be way more awesome, called Big Trouble in Little China. Yeah. Which is a good call. I think both of them win here. That was the right decision to make. How about you? You got a favorite scene in this movie?
Oh, my goodness. So the opening, I don't even know where to begin. Like, this is overwhelming. The beginning, like that first action sequence kind of tells you everything you need to know about the movie. Like, it is so over the top.
Yes,
everything about
setup, right?
Yeah. And this movie, like on a whole, delivers everything you could possibly want out of a movie. It's got product placements, demolition derbies, huge barrels of water overflowing the set, sword fights.
Thick French accents.
It's got Nazis, Clancy Brown, lots of fog machine usage. There's over-the-top sound effects. You mentioned the music by Queen. Lots of decapitations. That last fight when they're standing there fighting, and they're against the foreground's all black, but yet in the background it's the lights itself. I mean, just the visuals of that. It's got special effects that are really kind of cheesy. It's done by Canon Films, which I've been talking about lately a lot because I really want to do something about Canon Films. But it is just over the top. It's a really great movie. And that's why, like I said, I'm starting to appreciate the movie more as an older person, much older person, than I did when I originally saw it. And certainly when I saw it even just 2 years ago, because I've really just, come to kind of like a lot of that stuff.
So did you love it the first time you saw it, or did you grow to love it?
No, it's a grow to love. Like,
really? I loved it the first time I saw it. I loved this film because it almost felt like a cheesy 11 o'clock at night kind of HBO movie when it first starts, and you think it's going to be like really terrible, but like you said, it sets it up so well in the first scene, and that entire movie, I think it's well sculpted, even more than obviously the Quickening is, but this is a solid film.
Yeah, so, and I'm these are all inside references here, but do you remember like Brian and Larry and Scott, those guys they were a couple grades older than us, but I was kind of hanging out with them and watching movies with them. So those guys, they were all into, this is when I went on this binge of watching movies at Blockbuster Video. They were really into like really good, powerful films, right? And didn't really care for a lot of the really cheesy stuff. And so I think I was influenced a lot by them.
So when you say powerful films, give me an example. What were you doing at the time?
Like Aliens. Like they were really into like Aliens. Like, well, it's a good movie, great cinematography.
So cinema.
Yeah, proper. And then even the like at one point we watched Gandhi, like a bunch of nerds getting together, and we were going through and watching Gandhi, almost like it was like a film school, right, or a film critique or review of that movie. Not to say we didn't watch a lot of garbage too, but when we did, it was to kind of make fun of it, and so I don't think I really appreciated for what it was then. And so it wasn't until later on, like I said, that I think I kind of started to grow on me.
Okay, so let me run a couple of movies through you. I know these aren't in the book. Well, we haven't got to the references yet, or maybe we have, but I wasn't on that episode. Are these movies you would have seen? BMX Bandits.
Yes.
Roller Babies.
Solar Babies or Roller Babies?
Let's go both of them.
I don't know. I don't know Roller Babies. I know Solar Babies, and I've seen that one. I actually do like that movie.
Excellent. Oh, okay. So were you watching it at around this time, or around this time were you just uppity filmy, like high production value film?
Probably uppity filmy kind of thing.
Oh yeah. We wouldn't have hung out.
That's probably true. So here so a couple other things. Like there's a great montage in here, and there's a reason why it's great, because the guy that directed this movie, Russell Mulcahy, he's actually the guy that he's directed a number of MTV music videos. It's kind of where they got pegged to do this. He actually did the Buggles video Killed the Radio Star, which we all know is the first video that ever aired on MTV, right? But he did that. There's a line in here where Clancy Brown says it's better to burn out than to fade away, which is a reference to the Def Leppard song, Pyromania. That was completely ad-libbed, which I thought was great.
Hey, speaking of the Buggles, just yesterday, August 1st, first day of MTV 1981.
Oh, was it?
Yeah.
Oh, nice. We talked about Queen, and I would agree, like all the songs in here, Princess of the Universe, When Your Love, Don't Lose Your Head, Give Me the Prize, Hammer to Fall, Kind of Magic, Who Wants to Live Forever. That is actually written by Brian May, the Brian May that I mentioned earlier. But all the songs were in here were great. And I was maybe about a year ago after we did the first episode or the first show where we talked about Highlander, I was looking for like a soundtrack that had all these. I don't think there is one. Like, I don't think there's a comprehensive soundtrack that has all of the music that Queen contributed. You can hear it in the movies, but there's a whole history. Like, I didn't really get into it. There's a whole history in terms of like why it never happened, what tracks are still missing that we hear in the movie but aren't on the actual soundtrack. There's been re-releases. There was a CD that came out in the 90s that had some of them, but not all of them. It's just kind of crazy how that all kind of panned out. But to my knowledge, you still to this day cannot find a full soundtrack with all the Queen songs on there. I've got some other pictures here too.
Have you tried torrent sites? They seem to have a lot of things. News groups.
They do. Here's just some images. This is Highlander. So if you've never seen the movie, I mean, this kind of says it all right here, especially the sneakers.
Yeah. This says it all to the people listening on the podcast.
Yeah, right. Exactly.
Soak it in, people.
Yeah. Okay, we're gonna talk, and then there you go. I don't think this. I've got a picture of like Freddie Mercury with the rest of the members of Queen and Chris Lambert. I don't know if this is real. Like Freddie Mercury's head looks weird. I don't know if that's been photoshopped.
It doesn't look real to me either.
And then look at
like the lighting doesn't look right.
And Brian May looks like he's just completely wasted or hungover. You see him back here, or he just crapped his pants and doesn't want to let anybody know. I don't know. I want to think that's real. But let's talk about so we've done enough. We're not going to talk about Highlander anymore because we've already talked about it in another episode. We've mentioned enough here. I want to talk about one last thing, and this is not in your show notes, so this is going to be a surprise to you, Will.
Oh, okay.
I want to talk about a scene in the movie that has these guys. So, at the very beginning of Highlander, Chris Lambert's character, McLeod, is sitting in a stadium, and I think it's supposed to be like Madison Square Gardens, and technically isn't.
Yes.
Another facility. And he's actually watching this wrestling match, and he's watching a wrestling match with the Fabulous Freebirds, who these guys are right here. And these are your typical Confederate wrestlers, 80s wrestlers that you would see, just run of the mill all the time, right? And do you remember the Tonga Kid?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, he was actually in there as well. In that little quick scene, the Tonga Kid's in there. But the Fabulous Freebirds, there's Greg Cagney, I think is his name. He's part of the High Flyers later on. The Killer Bees are kind of, they ended up becoming like the Killer Bees, or some other characters in there as well. Michael Hayes is in here, Buddy Roberts, and Dale Hay. These are the guys that make up the Fabulous Freebirds. And they would actually go on to do like they actually had a little brief stint in the WWF as well, like in the early 80s. But the other thing that I want to talk about, which let me see if I got it here. Hulk Hogan. So we were talking about, you mentioned Kurt Russell, which I had in here that as one of the things I want to talk about, but Hulk Hogan was actually considered for the role of Connor McLeod at one point as well.
No way.
Yes, sir.
You're making things up now.
No, I'm not. It's
What are you
true.
gonna do, brother? They're gonna be the only one, brother. When I got these 24.5-inch pythons wrapped around you, man, what you gonna do?
That's what that
Yep.
movie is insane.
And I can see him doing exactly what you said in the movie somehow. I really wish that he would have done that. But I do wonder like what that would have been like. You stole my thunder on this one.
That. Oh, you were gonna bring up the.
I was going to bring that up.
That's a great movie.
But here's a question. Think about like during this time period. Think about the big action stars of the time, and if you had your choice to fill the role of the Kurgan, who would you have gone with? And not Hulk Hogan.
I don't know. Let's start with your pick.
That's not my pick, but Arnold Schwarzenegger was actually considered for the role of the Kurgan at one point as well.
Really?
Yeah. It would have been a different cast.
Yeah. I don't know. So I think any of these choices at that time would have been okay. I like films that bring people up. Like right now, they're talking about casting the Last of Us, the TV show the TV series that HBO is going to release. And there's a lot of conversation about which actors and actresses should play. And there's a lot of names out there like Josh Brolin and, what's her name that plays 11. There's tons of actors being tagged for it. But I think the really best films are those launch films where you really don't know anybody that's showing up for that. You don't know who these people are. And I think, outside of Sean Connery, can you name? Apparently you can, because you can name all those WWF wrestlers. But can you name anyone else of any particular note that was in that? You can in retrospect, but like at the time, what were those other actors really known for?
Nothing. No, you're right. Yeah. None of them were. Even Clancy Brown, like he's huge now. He's still even kind of a background kind of character for the most part. But yeah, there's really nobody else in there that's really kind of a standout person that I can think of.
So he did end up getting to work with Kurt Russell after all, or at least the writer did, because the guy that wrote Highlander also wrote Backdraft.
Oh yeah, huh? I didn't know that. Okay, I got one last thing. I want to play a little game.
Ugh. Albert shows a sexy picture
of Chris Lambert. Okay, so I got a question. I want to throw out. I want you to tell me. We're going to go through Chris Lambert's movies, and I want you to just tell me which movie. I'm going to give you two movies. You tell me which was the better movie. Now, spoiler alert. This is going to be a quick game because he didn't really do a lot of great movies. So,
is one of them going to be Greystoke?
So let's start with Greystoke, The Legend of Tarzan, or Highlander.
Oh, jeez. So I like the idea of Greystoke because
he didn't
didn't speak any English at the time that movie was made. But the role only required like a like a series of grunts.
Yep. So what's your pick?
Between this and Highlander? Between that and Highlander.
Yeah.
Oh, that's a no-brainer. Highlander for sure.
Highlander? Okay.
Yeah.
All right. And the last one. Highlander or Mortal Kombat?
Oh, so of all the miscast people in Mortal Kombat, him as Raiden was the most disappointing. And then that's like this weird circle because Raiden was in, Big Trouble in Little China. So yeah, it was like, I don't know, that family tree's all whack. But yes, he's absolutely unbearable in that film. There is no reason he should have gotten that role. What in the
So Highlander is what I'm hearing?
Yeah, it's Highlander. It's all day. Okay. There can be only one, and that's it.
Okay. All right. Are you ready to take the next challenge?
Oh, is there another challenge?
Yeah, that was the first round. There's only one more round. So we're gonna go to the bonus round here.
Bonus round.
And this one's gonna be a little bit harder because guess
ready
what?
To play the feud?
We're gonna do the same thing now, but with your. I know you're a big Sean Connery fan.
Yes.
I knew that coming into this. So I'm gonna do the same thing. We're gonna go through the movies, and there's more movies here, but I won't. We're not gonna go through all of them. This guy's got a pretty impressive list of films.
He does. I hope you picked only the bad ones.
No, there's some good ones. No, I picked the good ones actually. Maybe except this first one. So, all right, here's your choices. I need you to pick between Highlander or First Night.
Oh, Highlander. First Night. Oh God, come on.
Okay, Highlander or Time Bandits.
Time Bandits. I love that movie, man.
Okay, here's where. All right, we're gonna get serious now. Time Bandits or The Hunt for Red October?
Oh, The Hunt for Red October.
All right.
Any Russian that speaks with a British accent,
Yeah.
you gotta love it.
All right, The Hunt for Red October or The Rock?
So I know a lot of my friends would give me a lot of grief about this, but I love The Rock. Man, I think that is it's the best, one of the best summer movies ever made.
Oh,
Turn
yeah.
your brain off, enjoy it. I went to school to learn about VX Nerve Agent. I get it. That's not how it works. It's fine. It's going to be okay. Right? It's a great, entertaining movie. Nicolas Cage is playing himself, as he typically does. But Sean Connery is an absolute standout in this film.
Yeah.
Highest recommendation possible.
I'm with you too. I love that movie. All right, so I'm hearing you're going to pick The Rock over Hunt for Red October?
Yeah, I'm going to go The Rock.
Okay. Let's go with The Rock versus Goldfinger.
Goldfinger.
Yeah.
If you were going to put any 007 film in there, that's a lock. That is who 007 is to me.
Yeah.
I mean, just absolutely cool. And there's something, especially as I get older, even when I was young, I was like, I hope I get old like that, where I'm just still cool and I've got like salt and pepper hair.
Right. Okay, so I got 2 more movies left. So Goldfinger or The Untouchables?
Oh, God. Now you're killing me.
Yeah.
How far are you willing to go, Mr. Ness? He pulls a knife, you pull a gun. He puts one of your men in the hospital, you put one of his in the morgue. And that's how you get Capone, Mr. Ness. I'm willing to go anywhere within. Oh, man, that's highly quotable. I'm going Untouchables. Andy Garcia, the ensemble cast is outstanding.
Okay.
Kevin Costner, surprising. Worst actor in that film, in my opinion. Not a terrible actor, just probably one of his worst performances.
Yep. Okay, last one, and we'll end the show on this one here. So this is and I don't know. I think I know the answer now, but Untouchables or Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade?
Yeah, I'm still going to stick with the Untouchables here.
Yeah.
By the time that they introduced his character into Indiana Jones, I felt it was almost like a cash grab kind of thing. It didn't feel like it fit naturally into the story. It almost felt like the prequels did to me. Where they tried too much in that film to explain little nuances of his backstory that no one asked for.
Yeah.
Like, I didn't care that was the dog, right? Who cares how he got his name?
Yeah, I get that. I get that. There's a lot of debate and argument around which is the better of the Indiana Jones films, Raiders of the Lost Ark versus The Last Crusade. And I've said this before, I mean, Raiders is still my favorite movie all time, bar none, even more than Star Wars. But I get it because
I did not know that.
Yeah,
and I do love Raiders, but
but there are moments where I
don't have a
go back and forth
podcast.
Yeah, I don't. There is one which I'll plug. I think it's no longer around. But anyways, we're getting off topic here. But I guess that's the show. Okay, so I think final answer was the Untouchables for you.
Untouchables. You're playing a proper Irish Catholic guy. That's right in his wheelhouse. He kills it. His death scene is phenomenal. Yes, go see it. Andy Garcia, fantastic in this film also.
Yeah, and you don't get to say that much.
That's racist.
No, it's not. I'm not a big Andy Garcia fan. He's got good movies every once in a while, but he's not like my favorite.
He's got the same haircut in every film.
He does. He doesn't really age much either.
No.
All right. What do we got? I think that's going to do it for us at least for episode 9. We've got episode 10 coming later this week. Just kind of tip that one off. We're going to be talking about Greyhound buses. I've done a lot of research, more research about Greyhound buses than you care to know, to be honest.
Really?
Yeah.
Have you been on a Greyhound bus? I've done the field research on Greyhound and Trailways. I'll tell you which one's better, which one's really worth your money.
We'll get into that. We'll talk about Riptide, which is referenced a few times in Ready Player One, but we have to talk about it now because later on it's referenced in a chapter with a ton of other stuff. We're going to talk about Footloose, which is one of my personal favorite movies. Not the remake. We're talking about the original. Let's see, John Cougar Mellencamp. We'll talk about the TRS-80, Dungeons of Daggerath, and we'll end with probably some Conan the Barbarian.
Nice.
So we'll get into that. And we'll be joined by our first guest host after coming back from the break. So Mr. Neil Robeson will be back with us. He was
All
on
right, Neil.
the Game Wizards. And this guy's, trust me, he's well-versed in 80s pop culture. So it should be a pretty fun show. So he'll be joining us this week. Okay. I guess that's going to do it for us here. Any final words, any final thoughts on Chapter 9 before we close it up?
No, I think we've covered it, beat it, and kicked it a couple of times. So I feel pretty good. I think once at the point that you're talking about like B-level wrestlers, you've connected every dot you can.
Yep, we're done.
I'm going to give you one parting Smurf trivia fact.
Oh, geez, no.
Smurfs are exactly 3 apples tall.
Okay, you're welcome. And with that, we'll see you guys next week.
The views and opinions of the Basement hosts are of our own and are not in any way affiliated with Random House or Ernest Klein. All quotes, music, sounds, trademarked, and copyrighted material referenced in the show are owned by the respectful companies and creators and are used by the Basement as fair use for entertainment purposes only. It would take me a month to read this whole disclaimer, but sad to say, I don't have that kind of time.